Pod Candy,
a podcast about cults, crimes, and killers.
If you grew up in the early 2000s, you probably remember Jared, the subway guy, the college student who claimed he lost over 200 pounds just by eating Subway sandwiches and walking everywhere.
He became this unbelievably wholesome symbol. Subway's entire brand revolved around him. The success story, the friendly face of the company.
Commercials, talk shows, school events. He was everywhere. One of the most recognizable advertising campaigns in America.
Which is why the HBO Max documentary, Jared from Subway, Catching a Monster, is so disturbing. Because the man behind that image turned out to be a convicted child sex offender who was secretly exploiting minors.
The documentary shows how the investigation actually began with a radio journalist who started secretly recording conversations with him.
And those recordings revealed what he was really saying when he thought no one important was listening.
It becomes a story about how someone can build a completely trusted public identity while hiding deeply predatory behavior.
And here's the part that's honestly chilling. He was sentenced to 15 and a half years in federal prison, and with good behavior, he's already served about 10. So that means he may be out in like 5 years.
Which means the possibility of his release isn't some distant thing. It could happen sooner than people realize.
So today we're talking about the rise of Jared Fogle, the carefully constructed image that fooled millions, and the investigation that finally exposed who he really was.
Listen with care, because this is about child SA and other things.
Outside my window, it's only raining. When the wind blows, I feel pain. I don't need no doctor, baby, I'm not sick. My body's been locked up, heartbroken ever since.
Stacey, okay, so I had watched this back in 2023 when, well, not that we need to say where it was before, but, and it was maybe more disturbing the second time that I watched it.
Oh, yeah, me too. Why?
But here's the thing. So we had mentioned that, I just want to mention this up front. So Jared got 15 years and 8 months in prison. I looked up this information. So Russell Taylor, who we'll get into, he was the one who ran his foundation. Mm-hmm. So he got 27 years. His wife, Angela, who essentially sexually assaulted her daughters and her niece, got 33 years. Jared only got a little over 15.
And there's this speculation, and this is alleged, it's just speculation, that Subway had knowledge of it. Maybe they were trying to cover it up, because it is a big deal. This is the problem with the predator situation and the pedophilia situation, is that instead of being accountable, apologizing, moving forward, making a statement, in this case, or in any other thing that's happening around the world with pedophiles, what we do is we pretend that it didn't happen, and we've tried to cover it up, and we create all these smoke and mirrors around it so that no one can see it, but it's there. And the people that have been abused do not get any justice because these people are treated. It's insane.
Yeah.
How they're treated to cover people's asses.
I mean, we don't want to get into the Epstein files, but it's the same thing. Like, because it happened so long ago, people may not be that interested anymore. Oh, it happened long ago. Like, just like with Jared Fogle and just like with Epstein and, our current president, these people, these high level men are preying on children. Jared Fogle literally was set up his whole foundation, this Jared Fogle Foundation. The whole premise of Subway, most of it was for him to go to schools, and essentially he was preying on children. So he got his market were kids, and that's who he was assaulting. It went on for years, and like you said, allegedly. So just like we're seeing with everything that comes out nowadays about, now we're dealing with, like these reality stars and what they did years ago. People, these companies, these broadcast networks, they cover up everything
just to protect themselves, which is it just feels like that's what we are now. Now this is what we are. If a child gets molested, it's more important to protect the person who molested the child and abused the child than to protect the child. And yes, the Epstein situation happened a while ago, but we're still dealing with all these victims who have not received justice, and they're just walking around feeling like nobody hears them. And I feel the same way about this Jared, the Subway guy. He went to Thailand because it was easier to abuse people. You could pay to get a kid, and
not abuse people, abuse children.
Excuse me, I meant children.
Not only, because also Michelle was the radio journalist, and she was an adult, but
right.
Essentially, he was married a couple times, but essentially he only wanted to be, so he went to Thailand to literally get, excuse me, listeners, sucked off by little Thai boys and girls.
He didn't even know which one he wanted more. He liked them both. So what happened with Rochelle Herman, who is the radio talk show host, who, suspected him of being a predator. And so they developed this relationship over the phone where he revealed all of this stuff to her. And she, by the way, beautiful radio voice, just the way she was talking to him with this kind of voice where, well, what kind of kids do you like the best, boys or girls? Do you like blondes? But also behind that, she was working undercover for the FBI and like driving all this evidence back and forth to them.
Jared leaned over just out of the blue and tells me how hot he thought middle school girls were. I just shut down. It was such a shock to me. Did I really just hear what he just said to me? So I was lying in bed following my day of events with Jared, and my mind is racing. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where it would lead me, but I just wanted to find out the truth. I knew I needed to get Jared on tape in his own words, his own voice, expressing his desires, his confessions, and especially even his plans for children. It wasn't the most thought out plan, but once the evidence was acquired, I could hand over to the authorities. Conversations with Jared just got darker and darker. Just the darkest things that you could even imagine.
We should try to get some child porn videos to watch together.
There's this one phone call about his trip to Thailand that still lives with me today. When I heard what Jared was telling me, my soul was blackened.
Plus, she had two of her own children, single mother, two of her own children that were kind of not told. And, I have to tell you, Dr. John Mayer told me something one time, and I never forgot it. When you have kids and your children ask you a question and you don't answer honestly, You are leaving them with holding on to whatever this is that they don't know. And they're drifting through their life with this trauma or whatever this is. Tell them the truth. Maybe it would have been better. They didn't have a face to apply to this predator. They just thought they knew there was somebody out there that their mom was talking to. So everyone was scary. So you have to be honest with your kids, not to a point where they're, where they're going to a certain point with a boundary, because, and I've lived by that now, because I think that being honest with your kids is the only way to protect them and also teach them how to live in this world. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that was a major thing. And so Rochelle didn't tell her kids who it was. Now her kids are, I mean, poor kids, the one of them lives in Taiwan and the girl's trying to get better, but it's just a shit life.
So Rochelle, so essentially, like, kind of like to give a little bit of context. So Rochelle meets Jared at one of his like public speaking events, and she was there to interview him. And right off the bat, he mentioned something about like middle schoolers, right? That like, there's like, and she's like, did I hear that correctly?
Her spidey senses were tingling.
Yeah, her spidey sense, exactly. And so she thinks, wait a second, I think that this guy is into young kids. I am going to start recording him. I'm going to start having these conversations with him and record him to see if I am right and to see what he cops to. So with all that, she has these two kids that she doesn't tell anything about this, that she's been like involved with this Jared Fogle really just to try to get him to confess that he wants to bang young children, and he does, and it ruins her relationship with her children. She's an FBI informant, and let's be real, Stacey, like it sounds like the FBI kind of effed this one up. Like it sounds like
yes, I mean she had to report them to the police.
Yeah, she had so much evidence, and I get it that it was all on tape, but it sounds like the FBI, like, I get it that they need some type of like concrete evidence,
like seeing somebody cross the state lines.
But
they couldn't get him to
years. It took years, and in return, it ruined Rochelle. She became a, like psychologically a mess. I should say mentally. She became mentally a mess. She had tons of anxiety. She just wasn't doing well.
PTSD.
And in turn, that affected her children, who now, like you said, her son lives in Taiwan, but it sounds like he did the documentary. He obviously has a lot of love for his mother, but her daughter is definitely struggling. So she really put those two relationships at risk to do what I believe is a heroic thing but he didn't get arrested because of her. Jared Fogle got arrested because Russell Taylor, who was running his foundation, Russell Taylor was arrested for child pornography. And then Russell Taylor started talking about Jared Fogle, and that's how Jared Fogle got arrested.
It's really disgusting. And the other thing is, we'll talk about Russell Taylor, but this woman also Rochelle suffers physically. She has this disease called suicide disease, which is, she said, the most painful thing. I mean, the trauma and all this stuff is like in her body. And she got all this evidence. And as we said, they didn't do anything. So she went to the actual police and told them what she was doing with the FBI. They contacted the FBI, and then they were like, is this a woman crazy? They contact the FBI. The FBI corroborates the story. Yes, we are investigating Jared Fogle. And she had this one woman who actually believed her, and they heard this evidence and they were like, oh my God, this is the most awful stuff. But they still didn't do anything. So she said, well, if you don't do something, I'm going to play these tapes on my radio show. And they're like, no, you could ruin the investigation. You could muck it up, and we can't have you do that.
On May 13th, 2010, Miss Rochelle Herman came in to the station. I spoke with her about Jared Fogle, Her chief concern at that time was that he was going to hurt children, including her own. And she felt like we needed to get this guy off the street. She had already contacted the FBI, felt that it wasn't moving fast enough. And I think she wanted an audience to believe her and do something. My first concern was, is this a person that's enamored with a celebrity? And then she showed us her evidence. She had phone recordings, all kinds of information in reference to Mr. Fogle.
I want you to describe your kids for me.
My kids, oh gosh. Blue eyes, blonde hair.
That's a girl or a guy?
So which your kids do you think I like better seeing naked, your son or your daughter?
I don't know. You seem to like both girls and boys.
Mm-hmm. Which one would you think I would like better?
I don't know. I really don't.
No?
When I listened to Rochelle's tapes, I was shocked. I genuinely was shocked because he comes across as a clean-cut guy. But predators come in many shapes, forms, and oftentimes it can be people that we have a lot of respect for. I was very disturbed. I was concerned that there could be a possibility that this man was going to do things. But because Mr. Fogle lived out of state, there had been, as I knew, no crime committed in Sarasota, so we really couldn't do any kind of arrest. But we did take her seriously. And I spoke with Agent Billings at the FBI, and she did verify that there was an active investigation concerning Mr. Fogle.
I was there for several hours. I told the detectives, I'm going to play my tapes on my radio show. I was going to reveal who Jared was if they didn't do anything.
I told her, don't do that. That would not be a good idea. Broadcasting something like that can be very harmful to an investigation. Number one, it can scare the suspect off. And number two, it could cause problems for her. Somebody could come after her and maybe physically hurt her.
I was frustrated and incredibly disappointed. But I agreed not to share the tapes publicly.
So, this poor woman, again, she did all this work and it wasn't seen through on her end.
Yeah, she's a shiro to me for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Did you coin that?
No, definitely not. It's been
about my combining words.
Yeah, you hate that. Sorry.
Yeah, but I like Shiro. That's cute. Shiro is cute.
Yeah, she's a shiro. But so
yes.
I know, like, you and I have both seen this before, and then we watched it again. I mean, obviously
I watched it 3 times.
Obviously we are very incensed by this. Like, we have just so much. I know I have so much anger about this. But I also want to say, too, I think, and I had told you this before we agreed to watch this again, and I had my reservations because it is, to me, and to you, and I'm sure to Dr. John as well, which, he's in the green room clamoring to get out. But it's just disgusting to me. And that's why it's so difficult for me to rewatch these things that I already know what happens. But the thing that disgusts me even more than, Jared going literally, truly talking on these tapes about how young, a 9-year-old. Great. Tell me about that one. Oh, they come from a broken home. Great. Tell me about that one. But even more than that gets me incensed were the 2 daughters
of Russell.
Of Russell Taylor.
Well, Russell Taylor's the stepfather.
His stepchildren. Yep. The fact that their mother, who married Russell Taylor and got involved, who was a full-on Christian woman who would go to church,
fundamentalist
all the time, yes, that she turned out to be, a scumbag and allowed cameras in her daughter's rooms, in her niece's, which they didn't go into, but then I researched this too. The niece was involved, the daughter's friends, and that she
changing
said,
clothes.
yeah, they were right. They were masturbating in the shower, just things that young the girls were teenagers.
Normal teenage activity.
One was in middle school when Russell Taylor came into their lives. But then the mother also, they heard that the mother was saying that she wants to have sex with her daughters. I am absolutely disgusted. That I think I had told you, before we rewatched it again, before I rewatched it, I'm like, oh yeah, that episode 3. I'll always remember that when that came out. And luckily her daughters seem well adjusted now, and one of them has a child of their own, and then they seem to be doing, I guess well, but we don't really know for sure. But
right,
that a mother could, for a man, could change in 6 or so years to the fact of wanting to have sex with her daughters. That is where I honestly, I don't know, the line has already been crossed, but my head wants to explode.
Investigators served a search warrant at Russell Taylor's house to collect evidence associated with bestiality. He was living in a very nice house in central Indiana. By all exterior appearances, he was a very average, upper middle class person. Russell Taylor didn't have any criminal history whatsoever that we were aware of. Investigators did find images of an adult female in contact with an animal. And they identified the person in the images as Angie Taylor, Russell Taylor's wife. During the course of the search of Russell Taylor's house, investigators inadvertently discovered hidden cameras built into things that look like something else, like a clock, in places like children's bedrooms. When he was interviewed by investigators, one of the things Russell Taylor told them was that he placed the cameras there to prevent theft. But the location of the cameras was inconsistent with what Russell Taylor said. They were pointed towards places that were intimate to children, placed towards beds, trying to record children when they were unclothed. One of the things investigators found were videos that appeared to be produced by those cameras of children undressed, of children involved in some cases in sex acts. Investigators see horrible things. In my experience, the videos that stick with me the most are the ones where I've heard the audio. It's hearing the fear in the child's voice. The only thing that surpasses that is the horrors that the children themselves experience. When a child is the victim of production of child pornography, that will follow that child for their entire life.
After Russell was arrested, we had to talk to the FBI. I was in a very traumatic, frozen state. I couldn't even believe what was happening to me.
They sat me down and told me that there were cameras all throughout the house.
They were everywhere. Russell, he was watching us in the shower, watching us get dressed in our rooms, watching us masturbate. We were being watched 24/7. You just feel so dirty when you find something out like that. It's just really hard to accept that that even happened.
And the FBI showed us still images of just our faces. The rest of the bodies were blocked out.
I identified myself, I identified my sister, and then I had to identify some of my closest friends.
You know, one of the things I remembered from the documentary that I thought was interesting, when they said the marriage of Russell Taylor and Jared Fogle was like a match made in hell. During the day, it was all, kids and losing weight and showing his big jeans. If I saw him do that one more time, and all this crap with that, and then at night they became monsters. Started, and the other thing that's so awful about Russell is that he was making porn movies from the tapes he was recording the kids on.
Yeah, it was all child pornography and giving them to Jared.
Such a violation of people's, like, not only is it the worst thing you've ever heard, but to violate people's privacy to me is so horrible.
Well, and they would tell the kids, like Russell and their mom, the mom was always, again, so religious. And suddenly now they're telling their 11-year-old daughter, oh yeah, here, smoke weed, drink, have sex. Yeah. Russell, the stepfather, Russell Taylor, leaves a big dildo on one of the girls, the daughter's bed with porn on the computer. Like, and of course those girls are confused, but they're like, listen, and not about the dildo, but they're like, listen, we have cool parents. They want us to smoke weed. They want us to drink. They were doing that so that they would get so loose that maybe they would have, again, all right.
Creating content. We need
to bring in the doctor because I think I need to have a session with Dr. John because literally my head really is going to explode.
Let's do a twofer. Dr. John, do you want to come in?
I have to come in. I'm dying to come in. If you see my fingernails, I mean, yes. I was clawing at the wall.
I know.
And we turned the heat up. We turned the heat up to like 90.
Yeah, he's shirtless right now.
And by the way, who was the jokester? Was it our crack producer and editor, Jeremy, who put the Subway sandwich in the green room for me today?
They gave you a veggie delight, which was one of Jared's
was my favorite, by the way. Which was my favorite up
Mine
until
too. I love a veggie delight too.
Love a veggie delight,
but not because of Jared.
No. But it was tasty, and I may be a little sluggish here because it really filled me up here. But thank you, Jeremy, for putting the Subway sandwich. That was kind of a cruel joke here, but thank you for having me back here because you both were saying so many things I just want to comment on and educate our audience on. But as I always do at first, a good documentary. I thought it was good. But again, like all these documentaries, it just justifies our existence, because we don't see any of the why did Jared become this way? And we're gonna explain that on our podcast here. How and why is this guy created to be this monster pedophile? And I wouldn't even say pedophile. This is pedophile to the extreme. This is a monster pedophile.
Out of control.
Absolutely. So we'll get into that. But there's a couple of things that I want to comment on that you both brought up right away. And Stacey said early on, this whole concept of denial. That we just don't want to hear about kids, being molested. So what happens? Nothing's done, that the police ignore it. And I want to tie in right away how you both said about the FBI. And haven't we seen this in other cases before where law enforcement, whether it's the FBI or remember that Texas case where they went into raid that Mormon cult and they go there, they look around and kind of they saw some evidence and then they go away like okay, but they're forced to come back in some way. And the same thing happened here in this case, that Rochelle is feeding the FBI so much data and so many facts on what's happening, and they're kind of taking their time and collecting and okay, we'll get around to it. And I have to applaud the Sarasota police. They took it much more seriously and investigating. That prosecutor seemed like an amazing guy. That white-haired guy with the white beard,
yes.
He was terrific, and he was like a bulldog once once they got the case. But I want to talk about the FBI in a second and why. Here's again our mission, the whys and hows behind the story is, okay, they're collecting data, and I know both of you are wondering, well, why? Why didn't they jump on this? Why didn't they act sooner? And here's my theory. And I've worked with these people for many, many years. People, especially in law enforcement, but psychologists, psychiatrists, medical professionals as well, we get callous to this. We see it all the time. And it's sort of like paper shuffling. Okay, here's another case. Okay, we're collecting data. And what professionals lose is what both of you have said so vigorously on the first part of this podcast. They lose the empathy. They lose, the getting into the victims' heads and all the victims, all the people involved in this, and lose the empathy and the closeness to the story of how this is damaging so many people. But to, oftentimes to law enforcement, or it's not just law enforcement, health professionals, that it's like, okay, all right, more data. Oh, we got to get all our T's crossed and I's dotted before we can do anything. In the meantime, more and more victims are being molested and abused by these monsters. So law enforcement people listening, medical people listening, act. Don't just wait for, everything to be perfect. No case, no criminal case, no court case is ever perfect anyway. Be empathetic with what's happening to these victims.
But this is and thank you for saying that, because the lack of empathy, but I truly don't understand. And I get it that tapes aren't going to be admissible in court and they want to build a case, like the FBI was looking to build a case against him. But this took years. And again, it wasn't because of Rochelle, the radio personality. It was because of Russell Taylor. And I feel like, because they got him, police arrested him for pornography. But I feel like this does happen so much in our society. Like, Jared is the face. Jared is such this mild-mannered, public figure. But the FBI really, I wouldn't think that they would have any skin in the game with Jared, whether he was a celebrity or not. But they're listening to recordings of Jared saying, and here is a word that Jared brought up more than one time, he likes to pound young children. Pound came up multiple times in his vernacular. But if you hear somebody saying they want to pound children, don't you try to go after them sooner rather than later?
It's exactly my point, is that how can you listen to this and hear something so objectifying another human being, that pound? Who talks like that,
Ew.
And you're right, Dori. He said many times in the tapes that were collected about pounding kids, and how there's an aggressive quality to it, which I'll get into the whys, what created Jared a little later. But keep in mind that pounding idea, because that goes along with my theories of what made the Jared. But you're exactly right. And I have to
go back. Tell us now. I want to know.
Yeah.
Give us the theory. Tell
us why he became this way. What happened to him?
Well, let's go back. And this is what, again, we see this so many times in the material that we analyze on these podcasts. There's no description of, well, what made this guy? And let's go back and look at him as a middle school person. He was, and I may be wrong here, close to 400 pounds as a middle school kid.
I think that's a little too much.
Was
But
that
yes,
later? Was that?
yeah, like as a kid, he did lose 200 pounds, but I think, yeah, he was
But
close
that was when
probably
he
to
was 20 or 19. He
but he was
lost
a
the
big
200
kid. He was
pounds.
a
He
very
was a huge,
large,
he was morbidly, we call it morbidly obese
morbidly
young
obese.
man. And then when you saw the pictures of him, that was an unusual young man for his age. That's what I'm getting at. I don't know I qualified myself when I said I might get this wrong, but he was morbidly obese. And friends of his were interviewed on the documentary, friends of his at the time of middle school, et cetera, and said, he was really just like almost excluded. He was considered out of the mainstream because he was such a large kid.
When he was young, Jared Fogle was shy, very nerdy, smart, and a bit of a loner, probably because he was an outcast. He started gaining weight really young, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Jared was probably the heaviest person in middle school, and that includes adults too. And I think it was probably between 250 and 300 pounds. I just remember that by the time we got to high school, he was morbidly obese. For Jared to have that much weight on him, it's like he had a target on his back.
For lack of better words, you couldn't miss him, I don't know. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but But yeah, it was hard to miss, and you could tell that he knew. I'd be willing to bet that he went home crying a lot. It's almost like his childhood was stolen from him because every day was kind of a battle. Where is he going to sit for lunch?
Would you have sat next to Jared in the dining hall?
No, that would have been social suicide. I never saw him with anybody. I can only imagine how lonely it was for Jared and just scary.
I think every doctor would agree that a lot of your early years mold you into who you are. If you have a lot of insecurities and a lot of people are ripping on those all the time when you're a child, I mean, that's got to mess with you in all kinds of different ways.
I think the weight was a symptom of him checking out of life. He kept just finding friendship in food. He references that in the book and everything.
I overate to compensate for my social awkwardness. I overate because I just plain loved the taste of food. But as I grew fatter and fatter, I felt more isolated. Eventually, I felt that I didn't have any real friends in the world except for one: food.
He just let it take hold of him, and he was going to die young if he didn't get that weight off.
So his largesse is very important.
Is that okay, Stacey? Largesse, is that an okay word for Dr.
It's a word.
It's okay. Yeah, is it a word?
It's a word. Get the Oxford Dictionary out.
I do have some facts here. I mean, from AI. Yeah. So what do we? Jared Fogle's specific weight during high school is not widely documented in public records, but he became heavily obese around that time, later reaching a peak weight of approximately 425 pounds.
Yeah.
He gained it by poor diet, lack of exercise, which is why.
Essentially you are right, Dr. John, because he really started losing weight in college. So he still so you may be right. He may have been, so I'm wrong. Yeah.
Well, again, in the documentary, they had pictures of him as a middle school kid, and he was, again, the term is morbidly obese, which concerns me, by the way. I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent. His father was a doctor, and his mother was a professional person too.
Yes.
The documentary had pictures of him as a child, and it was gross. No, so number one of how and why this develops. How do parents let a child get that sick? That's a sickness to be that obese. And I don't want to get into parents that are obsessively crazy about dieting and their children. We'll have another episode. I'm sure we'll have a case about parents who who berate and nag their kids about weight. But this is
I
neglect.
think we had the way down. I think we did the way down where that
Exactly.
was
our first one.
The
Exactly.
opposite. Yeah.
Exactly. But this is something. How can you watch your kid get that huge?
But he was so depressed, right? He was so depressed that his only friend was food.
And where's the chicken and the egg question here? Was he depressed because he was, overweight, or was he overweight because he was depressed? We don't know. But again, very important in the development of this young man. Now, what happens? He's excluded from the peer group. He's this huge anomaly for the kids his age, and kind of the sick animal of the pack, and people stay away from him. So what develops? What develops is two major things that our audience needs to know about. One is that you get angry. No question that anger develops. Anger. I'm pounding, there's an anger to his sexuality with kids. I didn't get this when I was a kid, and this is what I had to go through as a kid. So I'm going to pound, I'm just going to pound. He was hurting kids, and he knew it because of what he missed. This is my theory. The other thing is, when you are that excluded from the peer group and you're suffering from this sickness that he had, which was obesity, it's a disease, it's a sickness. You miss what we call developmental tasks, or stages in development that you're supposed to go through. And one of them is sexuality at that age. You're learning and discovering about sexuality, and he doesn't go through normal sexuality development. And what happens? Voila, we have a pedophile created. Someone's
Can I say something?
Angry at kids, pounding them because of what he missed and what deficits he has.
Well, I was just going to say that is the common theme, or these people that grow up in these extreme evangelical homes, or IBLP, or Mormonism, or any of these things. They're not taught about, and we talked about Orthodox Judaism. They're not taught about sexuality. They're taught the purity culture. Women have to be meek. Women have to be sweet, keep sweet, pray, and obey. Women have to do this, while the men are, nobody's allowed to have sex. You have to court. You're not allowed to sit on each other's laps. You're not allowed to front hug. If you keep beating this into kids when they're growing up, they are going to develop abnormal sexual impulses, feelings. They're not going to understand it. And it's criminal.
Stacey, you're absolutely right on the spot. And again, you're just saying in different words what I just talked about. What happens is they miss these developmental tasks, which are so important in our development.
Yeah.
And we don't know if we don't know what religion played in Jared's personal life.
Let me say this. I think it's very important. Sorry to interrupt, Dori, but I don't think religion's played a part at all. Again, I get back to this doctor, father, and professional mother, and I use the word neglect. I think just the opposite of what we've seen in a lot of cases. Not control, not this absolute crazy religious control, but probably freedom. Almost like
no
didn't
boundaries.
give a shit about the kid, because they let him just eat and eat and eat and eat, and shove food in his mouth until he blows up. Or was that their aim, for this kid to just explode when he was 17 or something? That shows neglect. That shows like they weren't even paying attention to this kid. I don't know how you couldn't when you're 300 pounds walking around the house at 14. But and again, audience, this is all theory right now, but this is what we do as forensic psychologists. We collect facts and we develop theories based on what we see and hear here. And
I have a question. I do have a question, and this is jumping just a little bit ahead because, he was married a couple times and he had children. How likely is it that a pedophile like Jared would molest his own children? I know his wife immediately got divorced from him. I do believe she did not know because he was always he would travel so much. But in your studies and you're talking to other patients, what is the likelihood, do you think, that a pedophile will also do something to their own children?
That's a great question and a wonderful question for this podcast and our audience and their learning of these people. Well, first of all, take a look at what was her name? That Mrs. Russell, Taylor's wife,
Abby.
Hannah and Christian's mother.
Oh, Angela,
who wanted to have sex with her own kids. Remember what I say this all the time in podcasts: progression. Things progress. And so to answer your question, Dori, let me get to the question. What's the likelihood? It would probably progress to that at some stage, but by something, we're talking about chronology here too. By the time a pedophile would progress to that stage, see, don't forget, it's always about more and more and more and more and more, whether it's a serial killer or an addict, or now here we're talking about a pedophile. It gets more and more and more extreme. We even saw this in the documentary with Jared. So would it progress to that? But again, we're talking about a race here. Maybe by that time, his kids would be, older, and he loses interest. Where notice the progression to, at first he was talking about 15 and 16-year-old kids. Then it goes down to 12 and 11. Then it goes down to 6 and 7-year-old kids that Jared was attracted to. So you see that progression as we see in crimes all the time.
So so what you're saying is it could be either neglect or a household that is abusive or sexually abusive or physically abusive, maybe even verbally abusive. I mean, because the difference is we have Jared, the subway guy, seems normal, two professional parents, like you said, in Indianapolis, went to high school, went to Indiana, had a bar mitzvah, went to Israel. Like, I read his bio, like he had a decent, normal life. So religion didn't play a part. But then you look at, the Duggars, and you see these, these two guys. Now they have 2 out of their 19 that have been arrested. And they grew up in a very strict conservative religion cult. And then this is what happens to them. Does that mean that somebody abused them? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, I'm chuckling because, audience, that's why you continue to listen to Pod Candy, because none of these crimes there's one answer to, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's not a formula.
We have both the constricted, over-religious, controlled development of crime, and we have the, total freedom and neglect, and verbal and physical abuse that could happen. There was no evidence, by the way, Stacey, of any physical abuse by these parents of Jared, but there was a hint of, insults and again, neglect. And by neglect can just be, they didn't care. They just let this kid go, and so I think that's part of the fun. But you're right on with how this developed in Jared. This is what we're dealing with.
What is your thinking about, well, I'm curious to know, what do you think about the fact that Jared got a lighter sentence than
Russell
Taylor and
or Angela?
I'm dying to talk about that, and thank you, Dori. I had it in my little note to talk about. When the documentary, which was well done, you kind of kept us hanging, and now we're going to get to the sentencing of.
Took a while.
They kept us hanging on for a couple minutes, and I'm going, yes, 50 years. The range of sentencing that the judge had, the ability to sentence was from 5 to 50 years for Jared and everything he
5
did.
to 50? 50? I missed
50.
that.
He could have gotten 50 years for what happened. And I was watching the documentary, I'm going, yeah, 50 years. And he got 15.5 years.
Crazy. And he served 10 already.
Yeah. I just think, like both of you hinted at, before. Mr. Taylor gets, what was it, 20 years? He got 20
He got
years.
20. No. So Russell Taylor got 27 and Angela, the wife, got 33 years.
33. And Jared, the kingpin of all this, the epicenter of all this evil, gets 15.5 years.
He got 15.8. 15.8.
Oh, 8? I wrote down from the
looked it
document
up.
15.5. Anyway.
I don't know. Anywhere, but 15 and a half. We'll call it.
We're quibbling about 3 months of
15
this
and a
guy's
half.
life.
But it's such a light sentence, and the other
It is
two
light.
get
I
double.
think it's light.
The other two get double.
It's terrible. Why is that? Because they were favoring him?
Better lawyers. I think.
Really? Right.
Jared had more money and he had better lawyers. And, the documentary hinted at that. They showed some of the transcripts from the defense lawyers of Jared. And one of the things they highlighted was how the lawyers tried to make light of his pedophilia. It was mild pedophilia.
For me, my goal was to get a sentence that I thought was a fair reflection of what we knew he had done. The minimum sentence he could get was 5 years. The maximum sentence he could receive was 50 years. In the sentencing hearing, the defendant gets an opportunity to directly address the court. Fogle went on to tell Judge Pratt, "I went from being raised with good, solid morals and values to living the life of deception, lies, and complete self-centeredness. I had become dependent on alcohol, pornography, and prostitutes. The victims that I have harmed as a result of my decisions will carry a huge burden for the rest of their lives. Not a day will go by that I don't think about them. I take full and absolute responsibility for what I have done."
Jared's defense attorneys had him evaluated. One of the experts provided testimony that Jared was addicted to sexual activity.
His attorneys said early on that he had swapped his food addiction for a sex addiction.
And that he was a good candidate for treatment, that he would be able to beat this and get better. That seems ludicrous on its face today. It seemed ludicrous at the time. I think you could have any number of addictions and you're not suddenly going to find someone who's underage sexually attractive. The defense had one of their witnesses saying it was mild pedophilia, that his problem primarily was teenage girls. But he was, according to our evidence, sexually attracted to children as young as age 6, boys and girls. Several women around the United States came forward and said Jared would bring up the issue of his sexual attraction to minors. One of them, Rochelle Herman, had a set of recordings with Jared Fogle over a period of time.
Have you ever been in a locker room at one of the schools?
Not during school, which I wish I would be.
Really?
Yeah, I'd love to try to do that.
I wonder how you do that.
I don't know, and I'd love to slip a video camera in there, at the very least, and watch it strip down.
Oh,
but what
really?
the hell
What
is
about
mild
if it's your
pedophilia?
child?
Yeah, what's mild pedophilia when you're getting pounded?
Yeah, and what are the degrees of pedophilia? So now we have a quantified range of a quote-unquote mild. Would you think mild pedophilia is literally going to schools, going to Thailand, going to New York, calling up escort services to try to get little children to your room to pound? Is that mild? Because if that's mild pedophilia, I don't even want to know what high level pedophilia would be.
The answer is just like pregnancy. Is there a mild pregnancy? Is there a little bit pregnant? Are you a little bit pregnant?
Right.
No, you're pregnant. And the same thing with pedophiles. You're a pedophile. By the way, I want to slip in for audience information. One of the lowest success rates we have with disorders and crime is the rehabilitation of pedophiles.
Really? Do you even believe that it can happen?
Very low. It's very rare that a pedophile gets truly rehabilitated.
So what does it mean when they're then registered? So if he gets out, he's a registered sex offender.
Yeah, he has to register.
Right. And then what does that mean to be a registered sex offender? What can he not do as a registered
Well, he's certainly not going to be a spokesperson for Jersey Mike's or some other sandwich
Maybe
place.
he will be for Jersey Mike's
I don't
instead
know.
of Subway.
Yeah.
But what it means is that he has to register in any community he lives in, and that's public record. So, for example, if you're buying a house in the Cleveland Heights, Ohio, and you're looking at the neighborhood profile, you can see that a pedophile is registered and maybe living next door to you. And if you have a
Can
couple,
he not go to certain things? Can he not like go to a school or can he
it
just
has to
walk
be
around?
right. Good point. There's a lot of rules for the registered pedophile sex offenders. One of them is, you have to be a certain distance from school.
Well,
literally distance. It's quantified. It's like 20 feet from a school.
He can't see his own children. I mean, he's ruined his own children too.
Yeah.
Who had a dad, and now they don't know what the hell's going on. I'm sure. I mean, he should not be able to. Josh Duggar is, when he gets out, which he got a light sentence too, in my opinion. He's not allowed to be with his children alone.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of restrictions on this guy, and
I mean,
let's face it, his life is pretty much ruined. That's the other thing you have to think about in terms of sentences, both of you, is that we get angry, and I got angry at the fact that Jared got 15.8 years.
Yeah,
but he's going to suffer the rest of his life. His life is not going to be, to use your expression, kosher.
Why? What have you ever? Can I ask you a personal question? And it's not personal because I'm asking on the podcast. Have you ever worked with a pedophile and been successful in getting them healthy?
No, and I'll tell you why. The biggest reason is that I don't take pedophiles as for therapy cases. I can't deal with them. One of the things is the absolute baseline of being a good therapist is that you have to be objective. I can't be objective with a pedophile. I would want to stab them in my office because I have children. I can't have any objectivity over
Where is your line? Where is your line? So what is your line? Like pedophiles? No. Will you take on a murderer will you?
Yes.
I'll curious.
I'll take on, I deal with criminals in therapy all the time, particularly as an offshoot of my consultations that I do with law enforcement. Pedophiles, maybe the only one, and old people. I'm terrible with old people.
You can't take on my mother?
How old?
Oh,
sorry.
My mother in her memory care facility. I would love for you to take on Jody Goldman, and now you're telling me you won't? Oh my God.
What is your oldest age that you'll take?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's an age.
80?
Particular a case.
Since you're so young, Dr.
Yeah,
John.
39.
Yeah, he's 35. Oh, 39. Okay.
39. Review some of our other tapes. 39. I don't know. It's not necessarily a specific age, but I don't keep up with the research literature on geriatrics. I didn't really go through a lot of coursework in school on geriatrics, and I don't necessarily relate well to the geriatric people.
Shocking. Very shocking.
It's very upsetting. Just kidding. No, but that's I wanted to know because I think, what is the percentage of chance that somebody who's really motivated could oh my God, I just lost the word. Be rehabilitated as a pedophile?
Well, you said some keys there. Really motivated, really want to work at it. But that percentage is good.
Low.
But our overall percentage of dealing with pedophiles, it's less than 5%.
I mean, how would one even get that if that is such a driving force in your life, that is your attraction, and I get it that there are, you can maybe, I mean, there are a lot of men, probably some women, that are sex addicts, that are literally addicted to sex, whether it be a pornography addiction, or just having sex with people. But like with children, and really into child pornography, and really into children, and I do think I absolutely believe it's because when he was younger and nobody liked him and nobody talked to him, that it's almost like that Michael Jackson type of thing, where you want to, like, you're still maybe even in that childlike state. But
yeah, that's a good point.
But I couldn't even see somebody truly in their life shirking that, if that has been their reality, like, for so long. I don't know. I'd have a hard time.
Dori, that's a great comment, because what happens to us mentally is we have scars. You have literally scars in your development that oftentimes cannot be healed. And for Jared, it's the scar of what he missed and that development. And also, anger is a big part. The documentary did not go into this. Again, our purpose here. The documentary going, but again, the language, pounding, and there was other language, and I can't think of it right now, but just showed the anger towards kids.
Well, and how many times have we seen, just like in Ed Gein, the mild-mannered ones? You never think that the one woman who worked on a commercial with Jared and was like, "Oh, he's so humble."
One who lost weight.
Yeah, he was so humble. He was, and that seems to be a reoccurrence of a lot of people that are criminals like Jared, that they are the mild-mannered ones.
Also note that Hannah and Christian, they said so articulately, it's the ones you don't think about.
They said he was boring.
I think they said those exact words. They said it's the mild-mannered ones that you have to watch out for. The victims, these two wonderful people that were victims of this whole thing.
The daughters of Angela, the mother that wanted to have sex with her daughters, the daughters spoke in the documentary, and yes, are wonderful.
Yeah, they were just wonderful people, and they survived this.
Just got a call. I'm so sorry.
Well, we've got to wrap up anyway. I feel like I need to go take a shower anyway. This just all grosses me out so much.
I want to say one more thing. I know it's gross. I want to say one more thing. Can we, like, collectively as a society, stop worrying about ourselves and our reputations and our company's reputations and money, and stop defending people, stop giving them a pass, stop giving them immunity? This is disgusting, and it's so rampant now. I mean, every day I open my phone and I'm seeing there's another fucking pedophile.
Can I say something? And I'm so glad.
I'm mad about it.
I'm so glad you opened this door, Stacey, because there's something you both said early on that I wanted to remark about it, and it's probably going to be controversial, but it's absolutely true. When we talked about that denial early on, and why denial happens in our world about hurting kids, we still haven't progressed as a society, as a world, where we value children. Children, children are so neglected. They're, it's so, it's almost like we don't care. And
it's about the birth of the child. It's about the birth, and not about true child care.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really pro-life,
right,
then you are pro every child, and no matter what color their skin, whether they're an immigrant, whatever. But to say that you're pro-life and then abuse children is a complete oxymoron, and I'm sick of hearing about it with all of them. I mean, if you think about all these things we've covered, it's across the board.
Amen.
Yeah,
and it's in our Congress.
And you're right. I mean, I think Dori said it's about the birth. Oh, I'm a mother.
Yeah,
we can get into that. I would love to get into that in another episode where we talk about how these teenage kids in the ghetto, they get this secondary gain out of, I'm a mom. Look at the little baby. It's like you're 14 years old and you have a child. what damage are you doing to that human, wonderful creature by bringing him into the world of it's going to be a mess? It's going to be what we
Well, and
see in
not
these
only just
crimes.
financially poor areas, but also in religious cults as well, the
Right.
making of young children having birth. And again, this is another tangent, so I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but yes. So yeah, I think I do think we do a good job, and just our anger,
Yeah.
collective anger about all this and not following the money, I think is, like
Yeah,
Stacey
I mean,
said, is key.
it's all about money, and let's stop punishing the victims of the crimes.
Yeah.
We keep punishing and shaming victims, the Epstein victims,
This-
or even the Duggar victims. We shame them, we punish them, and even the religion themselves. They are more, they care more about protecting the pedophile and then blaming the other one because it's their fault. And this happens a lot. I've been reading about it constantly. Stop blaming the victims.
Look at in this story, the Rochelle. What was her last name? Rochelle
Herman.
How her life was so damaged by doing something noble and right of trying to.
She's a victim.
Jared to justice, and her life was crushed. Her kid's life was crushed. And this is so important. And I want to get back to Stacey said this, that the whole idea of telling your children the truth. And I think this is a super lesson coming out of our podcast today for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
But let me amplify what Stacey said. If we don't tell kids the truth, what happens is they're left to their own mental devices. And often they create fantasies of what's going on. By fantasy, I mean their own fanciful notion of what's going on, their own explanation. Kids crave explanation. They want to know what's going on. So if you don't give them the facts, then they create all these, they manufacture all these ideas. And you know what often happens is that they become the center of those notions, meaning they blame themselves for what's happening.
Yeah,
I'm the one. And this happens in divorce cases all the time. It must be me. I must have caused this because my parents can't get along. And so that's an absolutely important point.
Are you proud of yourself for teaching me that lesson? You said that to me a lot.
Scratch my nails on my vest here.
I feel like we could do another hour of this, but I do have to go.
Can I say one more thing, which is a lesson? Pod Candy gets behind the whys and the hows behind the stories. And I'm so proud of it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you to everyone for listening. Please stay tuned for our next episode, Twisted Yoga. Our theme music is written and performed by Midnight Current, and you can hear more from them on SoundCloud. Please visit podcandypodcast.com to learn more about us and listen to all of our episodes, or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much.
If you love our podcast, consider donating any amount to buymeacoffee.com/podcandy. Every bit helps us keep creating the true crime, cult, and pop culture stories you can't stop listening to.
So people can buy us a cup of coffee?
Pod Candy!